Well, this is some interesting news, isn't it? All right. Let's check this out.
Happy New Year to everybody. I hope your new year is starting off great so far. If it hasn't, I hope it gets extremely better for you. It only seems fitting that we kick off the new year, the first video of the new year, talking about the new Avengers team. And you might be kind of surprised to hear, like I was, that right now the new Avengers team does not have characters on it like Spider-Man or Thor, and even more characters that we're going to go over in this video. But of course, there's a good explanation of why they are not a part of the team, but it doesn't mean that some of these characters won't still show up in Avengers 5. So let's dive into these new reports that we are hearing today. So to start this video off, unfortunately, we have to mention the bad news first. Alex Perez over at thecosmiccircus.com, who is an incredibly reliable insider, has tweeted a lot of scoops for the new year. We appreciate that, Alex, but one of them is this. Avengers 5 is not coming out in 2026. There is still much work to be tended to and too much to be set up before they can dive deep into the upcoming Avengers movie. Now, of course, this is super unfortunate, but a lot of us really saw this coming. Avengers 5 was supposed to be Avengers Kang Dynasty. Well, Jonathan Majors, who played Kang the Conqueror, was just found guilty of 2 cases of harassment, and now Marvel Studios has let him go. Also, side note, I've heard some people state that some of these outlets who said he was fired didn't actually hear this from Marvel or Disney, but I can personally say that it is true. I have spoken to Disney and they have confirmed he is fired. They are moving away from Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror. They didn't comment on anything
Wonder
else,
got
like
connections with Disney.
Or anything like that, but they did confirm to me that he is fired. Now, insiders have told us that they are planning to recast him, which does make sense. Why abandon the story of Kang when you're already halfway into it? But now that this has happened and they have to recast and they have to kind of change the story, and we've heard that Avengers 5 is no longer Kang Dynasty, well, that means that Marvel Studios has a lot to do for the next Avengers film. So it doesn't surprise us at all that this movie is not going to be coming out when it's supposed to come out. It's unfortunate, but I would rather have them get a really good story down for the movie and have the movie be really good. But Alex Perez continues, and he stated, if the Avengers were to team up tomorrow, I guess the team would consist of Captain America, Captain Marvel, Falcon, Hulk, Wong, Valkyrie, Shang-Chi, Katie, Ant-Man, and the Wasp. Now let's talk about this team for a second. Obviously, you can hear that some of these characters that you thought would be a part of the new Avengers team are not a part of the new Avengers team, and Alex Perez goes on to explain why. But let's talk about this current lineup. This is pretty much who you would expect to be on the new team. Sam Wilson's Captain America, Captain Marvel, of course, the new Falcon, who will be introduced in Captain America Brave New World, who is going to be Joaquin Torres, who was introduced to us in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hulk makes sense, he's been an Avenger for a while, he's one of the OG Avengers. Wong makes sense because he is the Sorcerer Supreme. Valkyrie makes sense as well because she is the king of New Asgard, which is on Earth right now, so if there's going to be an earthly attack, it would make sense that she would be there with the other heroes to defend it. Shang-Chi and Katie kind of makes sense. It makes sense that Shang-Chi is there, and after all, Shang-Chi was there with Wong at the end of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Katie was there as well, but she doesn't exactly have any powers, although she has become rather good with a bow, it looks like. She's kind of the only anomaly here, don't get me wrong. I loved her character, I think she's hilarious, but still, no powers, and I should say no training, because characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye don't have powers, but they have extensive training. And then to top it all off, Ant-Man and the Wasp. It makes sense that they were there, they just dealt with Kang the Conqueror, and even if Avengers 5 isn't going to be about Kang, they still fought Kang. They still fought a multiversal threat. That should still be a part of the story, even if Kang isn't going to be the villain of Avengers 5. Recent reports said that Marvel Studios plans to kind of sweep Kang under the rug for the time being, meaning they want things to kind of fizzle out before they start mentioning him again and putting him on screen, and I understand that. However, you can't just act like what happened already didn't happen, especially if you are planning to indeed have Kang still be the main villain of the Multiverse Saga at the end. So I would really prefer for them to not act like it didn't happen, but to bring in another villain in the meantime and then get back to Kang. But as far as those missing Avengers that we thought were going to be a part of the Avengers 5 roster, Alex Perez goes on to explain a little. He says, on why Spidey, Thor, Daredevil, and Doctor Strange are not on the team, he simply said this: Spider-Man, wait for Spider-Man 4. Thor, wait for Thor 5. Daredevil, wait for Spider-Man 4, and Doctor Strange is involved with Clea in another dimension, and I really won't expect him to show up for Avengers 5 if Doctor Strange 3 pans out, as I'm told it will pan out. Side note, he does say, I expect everyone and their mother for Secret Wars, but what I'm giving everyone is the current lineup available for the Avengers and Avengers 5 if it happened tomorrow. Notice how it's unbelievably underwhelming and lacking in members, which is why the film in question is getting delayed. Now, he does go on to kind of further elaborate about some of this. He says, Spidey is disconnected following the events of No Way Home and what happens in Spider-Man 4, but he'll be there for Avengers 5. This sort of implies that although Spider-Man might be in the movie, and in fact we've heard that he is going to be the lead of Avengers 5 and Avengers 6, even though he might be in the movie, he won't maybe be a part of the official roster for the Avengers. And since after No Way Home, nobody really knows who Peter Parker is, maybe the Avengers have a hard time trusting him since they only know Spider-Man and not who is under the mask. And even if they knew it was Peter Parker, they don't know who Peter Parker is anymore. But Alex Perez is implying that a lot is going to happen in Spider-Man 4 that leads to Spider-Man not being officially a part of the Avengers 5 roster. The same thing goes with Daredevil, who we know is showing up in Spider-Man 4 as well. But it is nice to know that he still confirms that he will show up in the movie still. He will still show up in Spider-Man 5. But what is very interesting is that now it looks like Spider-Man 4 is going to release before Avengers 5. Whereas before, we heard that it was probably going to come out between Avengers Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. But now it's coming out before Avengers Kang Dynasty, or as we're calling it now, Avengers 5. Now, as far as Thor not being a part of the Avengers team in Avengers 5, Alex P says, wait for Thor 5 to happen, then we will understand why he's not a member of the official roster. And I would assume that Thor, after Avengers 5, and possibly during Avengers 5, is going to be off in the cosmos somewhere, doing something that is related to taking down the main villain of the multiverse. Perhaps he is out there trying to find the Council of Kangs, or perhaps he is trying to find some cosmic entities, or some gods, possibly. If Hercules is still the plan for Thor 5, and he's going up against him, the gods are still going to be involved in some way, shape, or form, plus not to mention, he is of course a god himself. This is kind of what Thor did in the past with the Infinity Stones. He went out and he was seeking to find more knowledge about what exactly was happening. Sounds like something pretty similar is going to be happening with Thor in Thor 5 and the next Avengers film. And Chris Hemsworth has already mentioned that if he does another Thor film, which is already confirmed to be in development at Marvel Studios, he wants it to be a different tone. He wants it to be more serious. And this sounds like a perfect storyline, the entire fate of the entire multiverse, to get serious about. And notice Alex does not say that he will show up in Avengers 5 at all. So Thor might be missing from the Avengers 5 film. Now for Daredevil, he stated wait for Spider-Man 4 to see what happens with Daredevil and why he doesn't show up in Avengers 5 as part of the official roster. So clearly something happens in Spider-Man 4, which is said to be somewhat of a Civil War storyline that makes it to where Daredevil is not a part of the official Avengers team. Now we assume Daredevil is going to be on the side of Spider-Man, but anything can happen in this movie, and since we haven't really heard anything about Daredevil and Spider-Man 4 yet, our speculation would be just that, speculation. But if you have any theories, let us know your thoughts down below. And last, but certainly not least, the one who seems to kind of be at the center of it all right now is Doctor Strange. Now, I've done a few videos about what the possible lineup for Avengers 5 could be, and I've never put Doctor Strange on those lineups because of the exact reason that Alex P states here. He's going to be involved with Clea in another dimension. Now, we've heard a little bit about Doctor Strange 3 so far, and apparently it's going to introduce the group, the Black Priests. The Black Priests are a multiversal group in the comics who set out to protect the multiverse. However, they did this by removing extraneous Earths from the multiverse. So some view them as villains, and they have become more of anti-heroes, especially since Doctor Strange joined them and became a leader of them. Now, this, of course, is coming from the story in the comics. What we've heard about Doctor Strange 3, it's going to be a little bit different. From what we've heard, Clea is going to be a member of the Black Priests, and the Black Priests have decided that Doctor Strange and all of his variants in different universes are the real threat of the multiverse, which is something that was briefly touched on in Multiverse of Madness, where Mr. Fantastic said the greatest threat to the multiverse is you, referring to Doctor Strange. So that's what we know about it so far. Will Doctor Strange go on to become the leader of the Black Priests? That could definitely be possible since that happens in the comics. But needless to say, it seems like he's pretty tied up right now, and that's why we probably won't see him in Avengers 5. But keep in mind, like like Alex B said, this is as of right now. If Marvel Studios goes on to change things, which we're hoping that they do, then this roster could very easily change. But let us know in the comments, do you like this roster so far, or would you like it to change? And if so, how would you change it? Who would you add? Who would you take out? Let us know all your thoughts. Marvel Studios is really going through a lot of changes right now. Changes that we are going to start to see this new year in 2024. Some they are voluntarily doing because they think it's what is going to be best for Marvel Studios and the future of the MCU, and some are unfortunately placed upon them, like the Jonathan Majors recasting and the writer strikes and actor strikes that delayed projects. But both of these situations are causing Marvel Studios to have to make some pretty big changes to a lot of key aspects of the Marvel Cinematic Universe moving forward. And today we're going to talk about two of the biggest changes that Marvel Studios has to make that some fans are excited for and some fans are really not excited for. One is the recasting of Sentry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Many of you might have heard this yesterday, but Steven Yeun is no longer going to play Sentry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's movie, The Thunderbolts. Now, this comes as bad news to some, but good news to others, because he didn't exactly look the role of Sentry. Now, don't get me wrong, he could definitely buff up, and they could definitely give him a long blonde wig. However, some fans were pretty disappointed in this casting. I was looking forward to it, but unfortunately, it looks like Steven Yeun is the one to have dropped out himself. But the big question that everybody is asking right now is, was Sentry a really big part of the Thunderbolts, or was he sort of just a side character? And was he going to pop up later on in the future of the MCU? Well, we're going to break all of that down today in this video, as well as go over some Kang casting announcements. Most of you know Jonathan Majors is out, and Marvel Studios right now is looking to cast a new Kang the Conqueror. But before we dive in, be sure to like this video and subscribe. If you subscribe and leave a comment, you're automatically entered in our giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox Series X, a PS5, some Marvel Legends items, and some DC items as well. The winner gets to pick one item, and we pick one winner at the end of each month. Also, big congratulations to YouTube user at AVR0709 for being the winner of the December giveaway. And again, we're still doing giveaways each month this year. So The Hollywood Reporter was the first outlet to report that Steven Yeun will not star in Marvel's Thunderbolts. They said, like many temples across Hollywood, it was delayed amid the dual writers and actor strikes. And they did not state the actual reason for Steven Yeun not being able to appear in the Thunderbolts movie, but they did say the strikes put schedules in disarray all across Hollywood, simply implying that since the movie got delayed, he can no longer do it.
That also does make sense, though.
And this really threw his schedule off. They also note that Marvel Studios has never officially announced the casting of Sentry, which is true. Now, the major outlets and major insiders did report this, and it was basically all but confirmed by Marvel Studios. And in fact, we know a decent amount of plot details about Sentry being involved in the Thunderbolts. And yes, he was going to be a pretty significant character, and in fact, it sounded like he was going to be somewhat the main villain at the end of it all. If you're familiar with Robert Reynolds, aka Sentry, you know that it's not just Sentry, but there's something that comes along with him, and that is the Void. And according to previous reports that we heard, the Void and Sentry were kind of going to be what were going up against the Thunderbolts at the end. Or I guess I should say the Thunderbolts were the ones going up against the Void and Sentry at the end. Some have even said this is kind of the suicide mission that the Thunderbolts were going to be sent on, to go up against Sentry and the Void. Now, what's interesting is with this news that Steven Yeun will not star in Marvel's Thunderbolts anymore is the fact that Marvel Studios has very recently met with Ryan Gosling about playing a character in the MCU, and now a lot of people are speculating that these two could possibly be linked. Just because we are finding out now that Steven Yeun is not going to play Sentry doesn't mean that Marvel Studios just recently made the decision. They could have made this decision a while ago.
That's true.
And that could be why they met with Ryan Gosling, because they knew that they needed a new person.
He's a fan casting too.
In the MCU for the
like
Thunderbolts.
I spoke about.
Now, of course, keep in mind that Marvel Studios usually meets with actors about multiple different roles. So for those who want him to play Ghost Rider or Nova, that is entirely still possible.
Right.
But you have to admit, Ryan Gosling, if you throw a long blonde wig on him, could look the part, and very well. We already know he can get jacked for the role. In fact, he's still pretty jacked from filming Barbie, and we know that he can play sort of a rugged role based off of other movies we've seen him in. So as far as casting choices are concerned, I think Ryan Gosling is actually a pretty good choice. And yes, based off of everything that we know, they still do plan to have Sentry be a part of the Thunderbolts film because he was going to be a pretty big character in the movie. Again, it sounded like he was going to be one of the major threats of the film if he wasn't going to be the main villain. From what we knew, he was going to start off good and maybe start off as even a member of the Thunderbolts team, but due to the Void and his mental conditions, he sort of doesn't have control anymore and can't be controlled, which of course, you know, is what Valentina wants. So she sends the Thunderbolts team to stop him. Again, it sounds like scheduling was the main problem here, not like Marvel Studios decided to scrap the role of Sentry. And again, the way the Hollywood Reporter reported it, it sounds like Stephen Yeun was the one who dropped out himself. So for those who still want Sentry in the MCU, don't worry, it sounds like he's still definitely going to be a really big part of this movie. And we can kind of say the same now for Kang. Now, I've seen a lot of mixed comments about this online. Some people say, yes, just recast Kang the Conqueror. Some people say, step away from Kang altogether. Right now, I think we're kind of too deep into the Kang story. It depends.
If he's going to appeal and he's innocent,
shown us the Council of Kangs and how many Kang variants out there are. I think recasting would be the best bet here. And as you might have heard, Marvel Studios has already begun the recasting process, which is a pretty decent indicator that they do plan on having Kang the Conqueror back in the MCU, maybe not incredibly far from now. We do know that Marvel Studios kind of wants to lay low for a little bit and kind of have Kang just in the background, because if you hear Kang, you automatically think Jonathan Majors, and they don't want that negative connotation associated with Kang right now. So they might give it some time, but they are right now looking to recast, especially with upcoming films like Avengers 5 and Doctor Strange 3, which we know is going to be a multiversal film. They're going to have to at least mention Kang in these films because he still is the overall looming threat to the multiverse right now. And according to Daniel RPK, Coleman Domingo is reportedly one of the actors that is being considered to replace Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. Many people know him from Fear the Walking Dead, The Color Purple, Candyman, Euphoria, and recently Rustin. Now, he is older than Jonathan Majors. He is 54 years old. So this could mean that Marvel might have a plan of kind of bringing in a Kang the Conqueror who could be older, good for his age. Wiser, stronger, I thought he was in his 40s all of the other ones that we've seen so far. Most of us know by now, thanks to insider reports, that the Beyonder Kang variant is going to be the main villain of the Multiverse Saga and Avengers Secret Wars. That is, if Marvel decides not to change their current plans, which they very well could. I do like the idea of going for an older, wiser, and stronger Kang the Conqueror, someone who has possibly already conquered a vast majority of the multiverse, which the other Kangs don't know about. So this variant could have gone on to really ascend above them all and become the Beyonder. Because based off of what we know, essentially, we're going to have a villain in the MCU, which we believe right now is the Kang Trio, that the Avengers basically can't defeat. And that makes sense, because they control time. They can see every move, just like we saw in Loki Season 1 and Loki Season 2. He Who Remains could predict everything that Loki and Sylvie were going to do because he saw it already. So according to Alex P. at the Cosmic Circus, essentially a bigger villain is going to come in to defeat them, but this bigger and badder and stronger villain is going to have a bigger weakness that the Avengers can exploit to ultimately defeat. So Coleman Domingo is on the list for Marvel Studios. What do you think about that casting choice? Do you like it? Do you not? And also, let me know what you think about Ryan Gosling possibly playing Sentry in the MCU. Let me know your thoughts about all this news in the comments down below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest MCU news. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.
Thanks, Wonder. Thanks for your help on that. I'm glad you got the scoops on that. You got connections with Disney and everything. That's what I'm talking about. Wonder is moving up. Well, don't recast Kang if he's going to appeal and he becomes innocent. He's proven innocent. Then I say, let him have his part back. But if not, yes, recast. We'll just have to see how Spider-Man 4 plays out, because I don't know if that's a good idea not to have him in it, but we'll see. You say he might be in it, but not a major role or something like that, or risen to the prominence of the leader or whatever they're going to do with him. So we shall see. Get over and follow the Cosmic Wonder. Tell him Tyrone Magnus sent you. If you enjoyed my thoughts on this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share.